And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the House Education Committee on 1/7/2026, 10:30 a.m. Our next testimony is going to be from an update from the Commission on the Future of Education, and assuming their recent work with Act 73. We have two people in front of us that for this committee actually need no introduction, but I'm still going to ask them to introduce themselves and then they can provide their testimony. Thank you.
Good morning, committee. Jay Nichols, good to see you all again. Welcome.
Peter Conlon, I was the vice chair of the Commission on the Future of Public Education.
Can you admit Kate? Got it. Okay.
Jay, just before you start with the main testimony, I just sort of want to reorient everybody in the work that we were doing on the commission. You recall Act 73 sort of focused the work of the commission on a list of questions to consider and make recommendations on. And I think it's important to note that we sort of did our work under the sort of understanding of Act 73. So it refers, to in many cases, or the concept of bigger, larger districts. So some of that is tailored to the language that is in Act 73.
Yeah, and I was actually going to say a similar thing. We went with the predisposition that this is the law. We're going to assume that everything passes the way that it's written, and then we're going to put this forward as a plan as we were asked to do by the General Assembly. So take that, for what it's worth. So what I thought we would do, if it's okay with everybody here, is we would just go through our main recommendations, and you'll have a copy of those. I copied them right from the commission report. So if there's any formatting off or anything, it's because of my copying, anybody else's stuff. Our first,
Jay, would it be okay to ask questions as we go through? Or is it easier for you to?
With me, it's easier to ask questions as we're in each section.
Okay. Thank you.
That would be absolutely fine. Thank you, Representative Taylor. So the first thing we're asked to do is come up with recommendations for roles, functions, or decisions should be local and what should be done at the state level. So, and I'm just going to briefly run through these, not read everything to you. We essentially felt that everything should be done at the local level unless, with the exception that there's a policy that's set by the state, then the local school district, whatever that might be, whether it's a school district of 25,000 kids or 50 kids, they should be in a situation where they have to have a model policy that is at least as stringent as the state's model policy, which is something we currently do. We felt that the vision for public education should be set by the Agency of Education with the State Board of Education together, and that it's important that you folks resource them in a way that makes it so they're sufficiently resourced so they can actually do the work necessary. I'll just go through the bullets, Chris, and then see questions. We felt that local school districts should be provided with the autonomy and authority to implement and adhere to the vision set by the state, but that the state should provide appropriate levels of oversight for that work, especially when it's related to statewide priorities. So if the state says XYZ is a priority, don't just tell local school districts it's a priority. Provide them with the resources, including, state support, professional learning, whatever is necessary, so that can actually happen. And the commission recognized that this is a significant consideration that warrants further exploration and discussion between you folks, the AOE, and the SBE. Okay. We also were charged with talking about a standardized simple ballot format. That is in the document. Not this testimony, but it's in the final report that was given to you. And that was centered around the education opportunity payment and trying to make sure that the ballot was as simple as possible. So that if a district went above the foundation formula and was going to spend an extra amount, the voters would vote on that and know what they were voting on. Our commission was not able to come to agreement on the exact language of that. We did come to agreement on most of the language. There is a dangling question out there that folks are probably going to discuss in this committee. You want to talk about it now, or?
Well, probably will be discussed actually more in Ways and Means. So.
Yeah, I would guess probably. That's true. It's true. And basically what we felt is that the commission members fell in two camps. One camp felt that additional language would provide greater clarity and transportation on tax application to voters. Others thought that having excluding additional language would make it more simple and reason that a school board that does not predict the tax effect of supplemental spending with a reasonable degree of accuracy will see it voted down. It all came down to language that says the supplemental spending will cost X per $100 extra in it wasn't tax capacity anymore, it's
I think it just your tax rate or.
tax rate or something along those lines. And there was about half the committee that said, we think that's just confusing for people, let them decide. You know, you're choosing to vote or raising your budget by 2%, it's gonna cost, you know, $300,000. And the other group said, no, we should say this is what it's gonna actually mean for your individual taxes. And so that's a dangling issue that's out there that has to be decided by the General Assembly. Should you decide to go with simpler ballot language. We also had a lot of conversation around the issue of collective bargaining. And what we came to for a conclusion, and you can see it underlined here. Although the commission did not have time to take testimony on the issue, the majority of commission members felt that compensation and benefits, including health insurance, should be negotiated collectively at the same level. Now, we had some discussion. Should that be at the local level? So that when a superintendent and the school district's lawyer and the board are all negotiating and the union lawyer are all negotiating with each other, should it be at that level? So that you could use those two things. Listen, we're giving you a little bit of a break in insurance, but because of that, you know, your pay is going to be a little bit less, or should it all be done at the state level? And our conclusion as a group was it should be done at the same place. We're not telling the General Assembly where that place should be. Either do it all at the state level or do it all at the local level. So that those two things are coupled together so that when you're having negotiations, it can be part of the process. That's the thinking behind it. And almost everyone in the committee, I think other than one or two people, thought that that made sense to have it be together. Couple of them. Back to how it used to be. Well, no, I shouldn't say that because it
No,
used to be
one way or the other.
like, right, exactly. So either at the state level or at the district. Questions on anything in section A? Of course, we didn't always come back to any of this.
Just so you all know, Representative Collins said he wants to use every minute of this next hour and a half, so.
Okay.
We have
So
lots of questions. You have to ask questions. Go ahead.
You can also ask them as we get done the whole thing. If you have things that pop up that you think of that are related to other areas, that's fine. Our second, go ahead.
Sorry,
You're fine.
I'm thinking about like the state versus the local level. And so like if we move to the benefits per your recommendations being negotiated at the state level, then that would mean a compensation would, and so we would basically be moving to complete statewide bargaining.
That's correct.
Okay, and did you get any testimony? I mean, it's.
We got no testimony. I just
Right.
discussed it
Okay,
amongst.
that's a really big divisive issue.
Yeah,
No, the testimony will take place here.
right. That's the whole
If we
point.
take it.
Right, yeah, okay.
No, we did not take this.
We get to handle all
Yeah.
this.
That's right.
But if I understand it correctly, it's that, because currently the health insurance is negotiated statewide, but everything else is negotiated on the local level. So the main idea is put it all together.
Yeah.
Either you go back to having the entire contract, health insurance benefits, everything local, because you might kind of negotiate between those, or make it all statewide. Don't have half done one way and
Exactly.
half done
That's
another.
exactly
Be
right.
consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Representative Long?
Thank you.
Oh, did you?
I'm
No,
sorry.
no. Oh, so it's just helpful, I think, for us all to remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason we went with health insurance at the state levels was to have a larger pool and to be able to lower costs.
Yeah, that hasn't worked.
And
intent.
that has not, well, that's my whole point. The reason was simply, I'm saying simply on purpose, simply to reduce spending in health insurance, knowing that bargaining at that level, we could probably have a larger pool and be able to negotiate it. It has not worked out that way, and that's why we're in this.
I supported it. And I'm not saying I wouldn't support my back there, but I do think personally, I think most of the committee felt that coupling is the way to go, regardless of which way you want. I have opinion which way I think you go.
Yeah.
Peter might have a different opinion.
Yeah.
Oliver also might have a different opinion, but we all think it should be at this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Second section is what updates to the roles and responsibilities of boards and electorate needs to happen. So this note is kind of important. It's consensus of the commission that even under the provisions of larger systems as envisioned by Act 73, most of the current central functions of school boards and electorate should stay the same. So we think the stability is important, even if we're going to do merger and there's going to be tons of changes required if you folks do decide to force some type of mergers. We do think that we should keep the idea that school boards are still going to be basically the same. How they're going to be obviously be less school boards, less school board members across the state, all those types of things. And listed below are some recommendations that we think either are going to require a change in law or that we think need to be emphasized. Go ahead, Eric. Yeah,
Would you approach this as, thinking of districts as operating districts
yes.
or, and
Right.
setting aside
Well,
the construct of supervisory unions and not operating?
we did not talk about, there's a little bit about supervisory unions at the end.
Okay.
We did not specifically talk about supervisory unions, but we did say, and that would be the fifth bullet we'll get to after. There's a section in this that says other considerations by the committee. And we talked about 2 or 3 things that we think if you're going to keep supervisory unions should be strong, should be fixed. And we'll get that near the very end.
Yeah, but
These
I think,
recommendations largely assume school districts operating.
well, I think you bring
Bigger
up,
systems.
well, I also think you bring up a point of clarity. This is really talking about school district boards as opposed to supervisory union boards.
Yes.
Yes.
Good point.
Yeah. Thanks.
School district.
Yeah, school district. So we think you should examine the laws, ensure they conform with changes that are contemplated in 673, and make sure citizen participation is as active as possible. We talked about districts should be required to meaningfully engage with voters. We think school boards with school officials should organize opportunities in an accessible manner. But again, we could leave that up to local people to decide how they would do that, whether it's meetings in every town or if it's, if you've got a bunch of towns that haven't been together before that are now formed into a new district, then part of the work of the new school board would be to talk about how are we going to make sure that we have voter participation and voter input into our budgeting process, our governance, our operations.
One of the sort of motivating pieces of testimony that we did get was from Burlington and how they take their overall budget and sort of the calculations of weights, and then how they develop the budgets for each of their schools within their district was sort of a motivating factor on this piece.
Trying to make it needs-based so that, if Edmonds Elementary, because of whatever circumstances, needed extra resources one year and there was more need there than with other schools, all working together for the common good of that community.
And they also have fairly well operating school councils that the principal works with in terms of developing the budget for each of those individual schools. So it's pretty interesting, it'd be worth us having some testimonies on.
And the business manager there did a great job, Nathan Hopper. I'm sure he'd be glad to come and talk to you guys.
Not to belabor, just for clarity. You mentioned Burlington, but do you think that's mimicked in multiple school, just town districts around the state, single districts that are multiple towns and schools?
They seem to have the most sort of formal process. They sort of operate in a way that almost mimics what would happen under a foundation formula. In other words, they sort of know their overall budget. And then very much using the weights for each of their individual students, they parcel that money out to the schools, looking at the weights of each individual student, and then the principal and other people in the district that work with the sort of community council of that school to figure out how to spend that money.
So I'm still trying to understand why that's any different than multiple town, multiple school, single district. Because I mean, isn't it done the same way?
I would say that in the district where I live, where we have multiple towns, the level to which the community is involved in developing the budgets for each of those individual schools, I don't think is quite as sort of formal as it is.
Okay, so community involvement is the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
We also talked about compensation for school board members. We think that should be established at the state level, depending on how big the sizes of districts were. We think it should be separate from any foundation formula. Else, we don't want to just, look, if we give the board members a raise, we're hurting our kids. So we want to take that away. Board members have enough on their plates. And we think that consideration should be given to the size and scope of responsibility. And I just put an example in here. School board members who serve a small single town with oversight of one school may receive different compensation than school board members who serve boards with oversight of multiple schools. Because we don't know where you're going to end up. You might still end up with, and you may choose to end up with supervisory unions, for example, and place, I hate to mention Peachum, but they were in paper yesterday, so I'll mention Peachum. Peachum may have, I think they have 5 board members. So you may still have 5 board members for 70 kids in one place, and you may have 5 board members for 5,000, 7,000 kids someplace else. So we do think that those roles would be a little bit different. Go ahead.
I am just curious about sort of the goals of doing that. I love that idea. Is it because people should be compensated for the work, or are we also trying to create more competition for people actually running for office and being involved? Do you think it would have that effect?
I think that the motivation was to say, if we are moving to larger districts with significantly increased responsibility, that there needs to be adequate compensation, and that should not be funded locally or decided locally, because it is far too easy for a school board to say, well, we're making cuts, we really should cut our own pay.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it would dissuade people from running for the board. I mean,
It would-
if we move to
it would
larger
dissuade
districts,
People from running?
what's that?
You're saying you think it would dissuade people that they're getting paid?
No, if they start cutting their own
Oh,
pay.
If we didn't have something like this,
Yeah.
I think it would dissuade people.
So we feel it should be, set at a
yeah,
representative level for the amount of work that goes into it, and funded, guaranteed.
okay.
Yeah.
So sort
And
of
to the
my,
second part of your question,
Yeah.
and I think it would help people be more likely to take on that responsibility. Right now, 90% of our school board elections, I mean, this is, Nicole Mason been gone for 3 years, so the number might be different. The last time she was executive director, it was like 90% of school board elections, one person runs or nobody.
or yeah, often you really have to dig up someone to run, so I think this could create more civic engagement.
Good, hope so. And then, of course, school district boards would continue to determine education policies within constraints of state and federal law. That wouldn't change at all. And school boards, we think, as a group, should have student members, so that student perspective is taken into account when making decisions for the school system. Yes.
Do you think there should be voting student members?
We did not discuss as a group. There's some of us that think that they should. I'm not gonna raise anybody's hand or anything. Some of us that think that you should have a junior and a senior, and the senior gets to vote, and the junior has a year of training, and others that think that they shouldn't vote. And of course, even if they did, there is some things that you have to exclude them from.
Right.
That, but there are ways to do that. But we did not, we never made a decision on that or even a recommendation on it.
And interestingly, we discussed and did not make a recommendation as to whether they should also receive the same compensation.
Good point.
And did you get in at all to how many members, what age of the members, any details? 'Cause I was part of that when the students were putting forth that there should be student members, that bill that you're
Mhm.
sort of drafting.
Yeah.
Just junior, senior, but the details of it,
No, I think that
I think
we
that's
did
fine.
not get
at
into
this
this. I think
point,
that's general
'cause-
assembly, and I think it may also be something that gets discussed
Be
if you end up
local.
having the voting boards and that whole
Right,
conversation.
right.
maybe
Just that
that's
there
the way
should be
forward.
some,
So
and
there
then the
should be
details to
student
be worked out
representation.
later.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, to move to C, okay. C is one we could probably skip. Nobody really cared about it very much. So this is.
We only spent, half an hour, 1.5.
Yeah, one afternoon.
Easy one.
So the process for communities served by a school to have voice in decisions regarding school closures and recommendations for what that process shall entail. That was probably at least 90% of our public comments related to that in some way, shape, or form. This was very, very tough. We had a lot of passionate testimony, public comment, survey results. And so I can only speak for myself. I think I tried to lead the committee in a way that was compromising to try to meet the needs of what I thought the General Assembly needed to be able to do, and at the same time, make sure that Vermonters felt like they were heard. I think we split that pretty well, but we'll let you guys decide.
Which is to say that really, we probably were not unanimous on any one of these
So
points.
none of them. I think we can say for sure we were not unanimous.
No, yeah,
Anyone.
on any point.
Yes. So this is where we
It was
came to,
close, yeah.
this is where we came to final language on this. So we say going forward, the commission can envision times when a local school board may recommend that a school be closed. Talked a lot about, there are times where the state may choose to close a school. We talk because of PSA violations, they're now we would call education quality standards or whatever. There's places in the law for that, and the AOE has the ability to act in that capacity. This is not what we're talking about. This is the board says, we really need to think about closing, Conlin Elementary School. It's, there's not enough kids here anymore, or there's a bunch of mold in the building, and there's another building down the road. We should think about closing. This is for that process. So what we would recommend is the school board should form a steering committee to lead the work of considering potential school closure or repurposing. So, one of the things that came up over and over again, if we have a K-5 school and you tell us now we're going to be a K-1, we should have a lot of say into that. And so we heard that and added into language repurposing. The steering committee that would be formed may or may not have school board members as part of their body. That would be up to the board. The school board would hold multiple meetings, and we recommend no fewer than 3, with the potential school closure discussion on the agenda. We recommend it starts as early as possible. And while not a statutory recommendation for you folks, we believe that absent extenuating circumstances, they should start about 18 months, at least 18 months. And that came strongly from testimony from the Rural Schools Partnership. Sean Castle was very involved in that. Do it as early as possible in fairness to everybody involved. At least one of those meetings should take place at each town or city where the school that is subject to potential closure or repurposing is located, or where students that attend the school reside, with the goal of seeking meaningful input from those who stand to be most affected by the potential closure or repurposing. We also added, we had a lot of conversation about this and could not come to agreement, that either there be an advisory vote or a public input survey held and conducted in the towns or cities directly affected by the potential school closure or repurposing. The commission could not come to an agreement on this bullet, but agrees that at least one of the above should be required. So the board is getting meaningful information from communities most affected. And then that steering committee should make a recommendation or recommendations to the board. And then that the decision as to whether or not to close the school should, if the board chooses to go that way, should be made by a majority vote of the entire school district by no later than 180 days prior to the date that the school is proposed to be closed or repurposed. And the ultimate decision should seek to ensure that students are afforded quality educational opportunities in an affordable, sustainable, and equitable system. So let's say you took Addison's and they decided they wanted to become a bigger district. And in that process, 3-4 years down the road, they wanted to close school they would not close. Public Virginia's pretty big elementary school. So, but they decided they want to close Virginia's elementary school. Okay, for whatever reason. And this is the process that would happen. And at the very end of that process, everybody in that district, whatever that district is, if it's just Virginia's, which we're not suggesting it would be under Act 73, but if it's a whole big district, everybody in that district would vote. And that would be the determining factor on whether it was closed. Now, what would happen after that is if the folks in Virginia's feel like, or people in the school district feel like that should be appealed, 5% of the voters in the school district within 30 days of the date that the vote is certified could appeal it to the Agency of Education, who would collect records from the parties, including student opportunity information and financial information, and then that would all go to the State Board of Education. And the State Board has 60 days from receiving the appeal notice to start that process, and they'd have to if they did not render a decision within 90 days, the SBE would be deemed to have denied the appeal, similar to how the Supreme Court works. Okay, now I'm going to read this other note and then let you talk to me all you want. The commission notes that it has received many requests that it recommend a binding vote of the towns or cities served by a school that a district board is considering closing or repurposing. Instead, the commission trusts that people in the municipalities served by a school that is proposed to be closed or repurposed will use the opportunity to persuade the voters of the whole district to maintain the status quo if appropriate. In addition, the commission recommends the above appeal process, which creates the right of an appeal to the State Board of Education. We did not feel as a full commission, although there were members that felt we should, that it would be appropriate to tie the hands of a new district board. So that's why it's the way that it is. And it's also consistent with current law.
Right.
Many people that spoke to us told us that their schools couldn't close, and some of them couldn't because of articles of agreement. But it's got nothing to do with state statute.
Hunter, you have a question? Here, Bob?
I think it's helpful to understand the current system we're in. And it's, I'm gonna make a statement, you're gonna correct me if I'm wrong about it. It's kind of all over.
Because of articles of agreement.
And so this is what I wanted to get to, because right in the beginning here, you say, it can be altered, I can pull it back up, but it can be altered. Any of your recommendations can be altered by articles of agreement. So aren't we talking about a similar thing that we're doing today?
So I think that this is a little bit of an area, and I think I probably missed the meeting when this came up, but in a future state of state-created school districts, I can't help but wonder whether articles of agreement would actually be a thing, or governed by statute.
And that's, okay, that's
I would much rather have you be governed by statute. But
Because-
currently,
because currently articles of agreement are really, they're binding and they're voted on by the whole district, right? So they're binding. And to get them changed around school closure, many of them say vote of the town is required, and that even when a school only has 10 kids left in it,
we agree.
you still can't get, okay. So,
Yeah, I
but
mean-
I worry about when I see this where it says articles of agreement can be written to.
Right, and there's another reference a little later about articles of agreement.
Yeah, I saw that, and I didn't go down.
That is something that we'll have to discuss, because
Okay.
I have trouble seeing how articles of agreement are part of the future state
Okay,
of similarly created districts.
okay, that helps.
And only for myself, I hope they're not,
Okay,
but right now they are.
Brett Brown, you have a question?
Yeah, so the 18-month timeframe that you recommended in the report, how does that match up to sort of current practice and reality? Like when,
It's all over the place.
I mean, is it,
Some places spend
In the
years
middle?
working on it. Washington Central's been working on it for
I'm not sure I've ever seen anybody take anything less than.
less than?
either. I think that
Just
language
trying
is
to-
very fair. I don't think it's gonna be, I don't think that would be a problem. And again, if your roof falls in, the state can still step in and say, sorry, the kids aren't coming to school. That doesn't
That's a
change that.
safety issue.
And I think that the language in the report is just sort of a recommendation, not a recommendation to create statute.
Right.
Hmm.
Obviously, if you create a statute, people will have to follow the statute.
Hunter, did you?
Just, could you expand a little bit on your issue with the Articles of Agreement? Just give me a little more.
Well, because I long just did. If you have articles of agreement, you've got a school that the whole idea is to keep that school open no matter what. And articles of agreement were written that way originally. And that school went from 100 kids to now like 30 kids. And even the parents of the school can see this is not giving our kids the outcomes that they need. I want more opportunities. It's a school right down the road, a group of people that don't have kids in the school that live in that town. And I understand their rationale, but they can say, no, we're not closing the school because it's the center of our town. And then the kids are, in my opinion, are kind of left hostage. If we can't create the appropriate opportunities for kids in a school, then I think we should definitely look at closing that school.
And if I can expand on that, because it's really important that we understand the impetus behind a community making a decision like that. And it, you know, sometimes a board doesn't do, well, a good enough job selling a point, or,
Right.
you know, I think we've talked about this last year in this committee, what's going to happen with that building? And if there's not clear decisions or recommendations around what's going to happen in that building, the community has a right to say, we're going to be burdened with a building that we have so many costs that we're going to have to, you know, to take on because we decided to close the school, where we don't, you know, we can have it spread out over 5 towns or 10 towns or whatever many in the district if you keep it open. So I'm not trying to point out that it's wrong that a community makes that decision, but I think students are not at the center always of those decisions because financial impacts are humongous in a community. And I think communities have a right to say, and it's really a tough situation. So I appreciate the effort and conversation.
I think this will be probably a much larger
Yeah.
conversation in this room as we move forward to the
It
second.
serves to remember that our current system is a voluntary merger system.
Yeah.
And that's why we have articles of agreement. If we move to a system where the state is saying this is how it's going to be, how that system operates should be in statute.
With another thing with the articles of agreement, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is they're very different. So you have a lack of consistency across the state. So in this region, like where I
There's a
live,
state,
there was a vote recently.
template,
There was
but you can do what you want.
there was a vote recently about perhaps closing the school in my area, and it's like, well, you know, just because it works this way in a school district, supervisory union in Southern Vermont, doesn't mean that it works this way in here or this way here, because it depends on inconsistent articles of agreement statewide.
It's also, what I've seen in my area is that, you know, sort of what does closing a school mean?
Right.
You can pull all the grades out of
Right.
it,
Right.
but, so essentially not operate it, but you haven't officially closed it.
Is it closing it completely, closing some grades? Yeah, it's very different.
But if I can just say on that, normally the articles of agreement say that a school can't be closed, and if it is closed, it's still to be used for educational purposes. That is, you get to define what that is. And I also just want to say that if there was built into Act 73 or some other law, support for a community to repurpose their property that they would be taking on when the school closes, I think there's a different perspective. I said it's an impact, financial impact, but we really have to address the financial impact of those, I think. And I understand the challenge around it.
All right. One of the things, though, is that just because a district closes a school, that doesn't take the school off its books and force the town to own it. They have to then.
Absolutely. What I'm saying is if a town has that in their articles of agreement where they have to offer to the town for $1, which many of them do, that is something they fear, you know, and sometimes it's just attorney fees and engineering fees, right? So for the next phase of the building.
Okay, for now?
Thank you.
Please, yes.
Okay. So this is a fairly simple one, process for monitoring implementation of this act. So that it's transparent, public facing. Despite, if you remember in the beginning of this, the commission was going to be the one doing all the work. And, then the governor's plan came forward and you guys responded to that and everything changed. So we still think that the guiding principles of efficiency, sustainability, and equity should be key considerations. And we just share those here, but I'm going to skip right by them and go right to here. Commission recommends that the AOE monitor the implementation of Act 73 in a manner that is transparent, public facing, and we have things here like providing regular reports to you folks, providing regular reports to the state board, any monitoring and future support, financial or otherwise, must acknowledge the substantial reliance on local officials to implement these changes effectively. Therefore, oversight of the law should actively incorporate feedback from those responsible for carrying out these changes to the local level. We are concerned about overloading the system and having business managers trying to do 2 jobs at once, or superintendents trying to plan for this new system while they're living in the old system. Those are things that need to be considered.
If you can, and I should know this, in Act 73, was there directive on the Commission of the Future of Education on the path forward for them, for the commission itself?
There was a change in the law.
There was a change for the directive,
Yeah,
but was there any language in there that basically laid out if there was a path forward for the commission, or if the commission is going to be sunsetted, or if it's
sunsetted, people are done.
And that's what I remember. Thank you.
So, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And that was original to the original charter.
yeah.
Yeah, that was in the change.
It was going to be done once we got, I think we all thought that we may end up going another 6-10 months to help with the.
Yes.
We don't need to do that. Other considerations, the general, some of this is the part I was talking to you about before. Major focus of 73 is to improve quality of education. So here are some things that we think, regardless of what the governance structure is we're utilizing, the commission thinks these recommendations should be thought about by the General Assembly. Right now, students who change their residence within a school governance structure, we're saying should be allowed to stay at the same school if feasible, unless the student's educational team decides that moving to another school in the system is likely to benefit the student. So I'll give you an example right where we're sitting. If we're in Montpelier School District, and let's say for whatever you folks do, Montpelier and U32, or maybe in Spalding, whatever, it all becomes one system. When a kid lives within that one system and maybe moves a little bit across one town to another, he or she can still be allowed to go to the same school. And a supervisor union structure that we have right now, they don't. So if I live in Montpelier and I move to Calais, even if my residence is closer to Montpelier School, I gotta change school and go to Calais. We think that's something that should be fixed in the system. Okay, that might be a bad example. Calais is put away. It's a bad example.
But
Berlin's a better
there are
example.
others.
Berlin's up where I live, there's tons of examples. Like even on my road, people will move from Berkshire to Enosburg and have to change schools, and they end up going twice as far to school because that's where their new town is. So, and they can't fix that because they're separate school districts. if they're one school district, it's an easy fix.
And as Jay said, this is, one of the challenges with supervisory unions is that if you really can move to the next town over, that is a separately governed budgeted school district. And to be able to sort of ease the burden of that move is really hard. Whereas if it's a multiple town school district, it's all the same sort of organization.
Money is the same, the staffing, you can redeploy staffing.
Councilor Plum.
So, yes, and there are supervisory unions that have districts in them with multiple schools and multiple towns that do allow for.
Absolutely.
Now, but let me finish because.
Yeah.
If what you're saying is that we're gonna hit the wall of operating structure. If we go from supervisory unions to supervisory districts and all over my county, we have this situation where some are operating, some are non-operating, they're all side by side within each other and if they all become one, they have to either do one or the other, in my estimation, in the current law. You can't treat children differently. So,
Right, so
Got
what
that
we're
in here,
saying
Jim?
is, you may need to update statute accordingly. So that students who change their residence within a school governance structure should be allowed to stay at the same school if feasible, unless the student's educational team decides otherwise. And the problem with the way supervisory unions, and Emily Simmons and I have talked about this, you'd have to change the law here. Problem is, it's like, I can't go, if I shop at Hannaford's and decide one day I want to go shopping at PNC, they're not gonna give me the Hannaford discount. In schools, we should do that. It should be about the common good. So if I'm a kid and I might move closer to my school and now I gotta change schools anyway. Remember who this hits. This hits our most transient population. It hits a lot of our immigrant students. It hits our farming communities. It hits our poorest communities over and over and over again. As a superintendent, I had some kids in my system that went from one school to another school to another school within my supervisory union and had to change schools 4, 5, 6, 7 times in 8 years. That's not fair to them. It's stupid. We have to fix that. Even Oliver Olson said that's going to be fixed. And I'm not knocking Oliver. He's a supervisory union type person, a private school type person. It's not fair to kids. That's something we have to find a way to fix. Yeah.
So again, I'm thinking to my own experience. So in the supervisory union where I taught, the K-8 schools were all independent, separate districts within that SU. And that happened the same thing. The kid would bounce among those schools. And then when they merged, all the K-8 schools became one district within the SU. And then they had choice at that point. So because supervisory unions are so very different too.
Yeah.
So if within a supervisory union, the schools that operated the same grades were a district instead of separate districts, that would
Act 46.
That would help
Yes.
alleviate the sum.
I think anything you do like that helps alleviate some.
But it could be.
It may not hit
You
all
could
of
do
this, but
more.
you could definitely do more than you're doing right now.
Okay.
Sure. And I think Act 46 did help with that in some places.
It did, I'll tell you, in my district, which is 7 towns, it's still like, you go to the school that's in your town. But the powers that be, the superintendent especially, has much more freedom.
Freedom to say.
We're not, you can just stay at your same
Yep.
school, because the funding is all the same.
Because it's better
That's the thing, funding is-
educationally, socially, whatever reason for
Absolutely.
that family.
Yeah, we have a kid who's struggling and my team's been working with him for 3 years and now he's finally making progress.
Let's
He
keep.
actually
Don't-
moves
don't let
closer to
them
our
win.
school, but he lives in another town. Sorry, see you later.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the second one, just as big,
Mhm.
all licensed educators should be employees of the overall school governance structure. Not of single school districts within a larger governance structure. This would allow superintendents to better deploy educators to meet student needs and provide more job protections for teachers in small schools. This already happened for special education teachers, and we suggest this change to apply to all licensed teachers. Example I'll go way back in history, yesterday. School nurse in a small school, has a full-time job. I think they've got 70 kids or something. Full-time school nurse, that town's made the decision to do that, partly because there's some needs there, medical needs. A school not very far away from them has 3 times the staff, 3 times the kids. Their nurse is out on medical leave. And the superintendent cannot move that one nurse even to the other school to cover for a day or two, or even to go over an emergency, because that nurse is not an employee of that other school district. and the nurse doesn't have any interest in doing that. So superintendent has, so the kids are the ones that are suffering that in that situation. We also have lots of places across the state where people are like, I'm an art teacher in your district and an art teacher in your district, but your district's in a different supervisory union than mine. So maybe I don't get healthcare, right? So all kinds of things like that. I think this could be better for teachers, but more importantly, I think we felt it would be better for kids.
So I'll just say, right now, we did not get testimony about sort of the employment law
Nope.
part of this, because obviously in a supervisory union, you have multiple districts who are the employers of the people.
Right.
If you were to sort of move all of those people to be employed by the supervisory union, all of a sudden the supervisory union budget is,
Well, it wouldn't be supervisory union anymore though. Well, that'd be district.
and this is the problem with.
That's the problem.
Job
They
with the
can't-
supervisory
They
union.
can't.
I'm not sure you could do this with that structure.
It'd probably have to be a supervisory district. Yeah, I agree.
So based on this recommendation, if a school district operated multiple high schools within that same district, an English teacher 1 year could just be told, you're moving to this other school. And you think that this is gonna be better for teachers? Did you? For kids, okay. I thought you
Better for
said-
kids, but I think it also could be better for teachers, because right now what happens is the newer teachers in a school, when a school has to make cuts, it's all the newest teacher.
Yeah.
If you get a bigger pool to draw from, and I'm the newest teacher, but now I get 3 different schools, yeah, I might not be able to teach at Williamstown anymore, but at least I have right to the job in Northfield. And I don't have to lose my job for some kid coming out of college that takes the job, which is exactly what happened, put your hand up, exactly what happens right now.
Well,
Yeah, in being in the big district of CVSD in Vermont and consolidating under Act 46, that has been one of the best benefits of our consolidated structure, is the flexibility for staff to move, to make changes when we've had, ups and downs in grade levels at different schools, when they've tried to do some different middle school configurations, been able to move some like really highly expert coaches on certain areas to schools where there's a higher need. I mean, it's just so common sense, but that flexibility has been really positive generally for the district students and teachers.
I would say in my district,
Very similar,
it was, well, we had lots of little, schools with little, and so therefore if you were newly hired, your job would go away the next year based on enrollment, and you didn't have the opportunity to move to another district. You have to reapply.
Again, if I'm sort of understanding, I have to go to my own experience. The seniority was based on what building you taught in, because we were all separate districts, so.
Right?
It came a point where it's like, I don't wanna.
Yeah.
Go teach at the high school, even though I'm licensed, instead of the school I'm in, because I'm now gonna be low
New kid on the block.
person.
Yeah.
And that 10 years of seniority I've built up goes away. So what's the incentive for me to wanna take the high school job as opposed to the middle school job?
Right.
And now, again, it was a negotiated contract, it's not by building anymore, but again, that's different from every place you teach in.
It provides significant job security compared to,
Stability.
yeah, stability.
Rep. Wong, did you have some comments? And then Rep. Harple.
So I'm not advocating for this, but because my SU has chosen to, under Act 46, merged more districts, so it's still SU, bigger districts within less districts, some schools closed. But for many, many, many years, my supervisory union has hired teachers who will move and serve different school districts within the SU. So you have small school, they only have art 2 days a week. They have 2 days a week here, they have 2 days a week in another
Hires an
district.
art teacher.
Right, so I bring it up
Same
only
thing.
because there has been, a lot of thoughtful use of staffing
Mhm.
to address the smaller, rural, lower population and.
I think that
smaller
reason is part of the
areas.
reason why we didn't take LSU, because there are ways to at least get better at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, better, but I don't think you can employ full-time classroom teachers.
You
at
can't.
any school.
You can't, and that's why I'm saying I'm not advocating for it, but we've had to compensate
Yeah.
in our state around this. So,
Harple, did you have a?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what my question is. Can I express it as a concern? I think like all of the reasons that you've given have me a little more convinced than I maybe was before, but I'd also just like to put out the perspective that like working within a community school model, like I've worked as an English teacher at my school for 15 years and built up that community with my students, with my colleagues. And I feel like it would be really heartbreaking if like on a whim, supervisor is just like, we've decided we're gonna send you to this other school and you're no longer gonna work at this school you worked at for 15 years. I'm not sure that's the best reason not to do this, but it is something to consider, is that like teachers might start to feel a little bit like cons if these decisions are being made arbitrarily or for the
Yeah,
wrong reason.
That's why you have a CBA. You have-
So I
New
imagine
York City has that.
guidelines, some very strict guidelines.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. You gotta have that stuff built in. It can't just be because the superintendent has decided, you know, I like Susie better than.
Right, yes, okay,
That'd be where, yes, teachers, just,
Yeah.
you know, still moving around.
yeah, just to make sure that that
But
would.
boy, when a person's gonna lose their job, listen, we can't carry 2 French teachers anymore. We
Right,
can't do it.
right.
Wow, we really do need a French teacher in one of our other schools.
It's an opportunity.
It allows attrition to be the job stability for the.
Okay.
That's
right.
Good shot.
Yes.
Keep moving or?
Anyway,
So I want to be really, 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 really clear for the record. I'll talk and you'll listen. Representative Conlon did a great job last year telling everybody that 4,000 as practical. People got so hung up on the 4,000.
Yeah.
That I felt, and the rest of the committee went along with us, that we should really put in here that we're recommending to the General Assembly not strictly adhere to the guidelines of 4,000 and 8,000. And I want to commend Peter because he said it over and over and over again that he wasn't stuck on 4,000. A lot of people out in the community did not hear that. So that's why we just recommended here to really make sure you folks realize there's no magic number. I always say 1,000 to 4,000. I'm going to keep saying that. It's pretty good range for district. There's research that goes all the way up to 8,000. After 8,000, there's a lot of research that shows declining efficiencies and declining performance. So I'd be careful about going any higher than that, in my opinion. But we want to make sure that you realize, as you think about forced merger, if that's something you choose to do, try to do it in a way that's going to be the most effective for kids, for the system, and don't think, we've got to hit 8,000 or 1,000 or 3 kids, whatever it is. Okay? Is that fair?
Absolutely, yes. It did remind me, I was looking for some past correspondence and during I think the conference committee portion of things, the as practical got deleted accidentally, totally.
You said it over and over again now. I got to give you credit. I didn't want you to get hung up on it.
But it was out of there for about 24 hours.
Yeah, I remember that. So, and when districts are merged, if you choose to merge, and we're thinking that you're going to be merging something, right? Because that's part of Act 73, you need to provide a reasonable period of time to voluntarily develop articles of agreement for the newly formed district. If the newly merged districts are unable to pass and propose articles of agreement within that time frame, then the newly formed district should be governed by default articles of agreement that have been drafted by the State Board of Education. Obviously, you folks can do anything you want, and you could say, this is how it's going to be when we merge these new districts. But absent of that, if you use the current model, which is articles of agreement, then we think that you should give them time to work on these, come up with articles of agreement that make sense to them. If they can't do that, then there's default articles of agreement. And that's the part that Peter wasn't there for, right? Any questions about that? We did discuss it a little bit before. Are we okay? All right. I did want to share some of the themes here, just to make sure that they're to the public, we're clear with the public. This comes from Afton Partners in the surveys and the comments that we received.
Active partners being the
Thank you.
sort of folks, the community engagement folks that we hired to help us out with this work.
Respondents envision a public education system as equitable. So the vast majority of Vermonters want an equitable, inclusive, and student-centered system. They want one that provides all learners with access to well-funded schools. They want strong relationships, safe environments, opportunities for academic and social growth, regardless of geography or identity. Vermonters do care very much about their schools. Respondents overwhelmingly felt that the initial education reform process was too rushed. They felt it was disorganized, inadequate time for deep community engagement, and they felt particularly from vulnerable or historic underserved groups and those with boots on the ground, educators, students, and local boards. Respondents, and these responses are all Vermonters, Overwhelmingly felt that Vermont's education reform efforts must slow down and center the voices of those most impacted by the proposed changes, such as students, families, and educators, by prioritizing equity, belonging, and local community identity over rush structural changes that risk deepening disparities. The next part, you can look at that at your own leisure. It just talks about how survey frameworks work in terms of who's the most directly impacted. I'll skip right by that. Then to the bullet that says, in the public input sessions and public comments of commission meetings prior to the close of the 2025 legislative session, numerous concerns were raised about the governor's education overhaul plan. This language is taken right from the document. The concerns thematically were that the plan is seen as top-down, inequitable, and lacking community input. Nothing we have seen in further community conversations has indicated those concerns have diminished. There was broad opposition to the 5-district plan. Accordingly, as the General Assembly moves forward with Act 73 implementation, considering and responding to Vermont citizen input is critical. We, Vermont, must take our time to ensure educational system transformation is transparent, upfront, easily understandable for all Vermonters, and that it will solve the issues that it was tasked with addressing. And the conclusion is, as members of the commission, we strongly encourage members of the General Assembly to carefully review this final report and accompanying materials, including the surveys. I read every single survey, almost 5,000 surveys. Prior to finalizing any decisions you're going to make. It's clear that any transformational decisions as contemplated by Act 73 are in the purview of the legislature and the governor. We tried to tell people that in public comment, that you do have the decision-making authority, and by our Constitution, as far as I can tell, the Brigham decision, you guys do. That said, Vermonters care deeply about public education and the local control. And I think we all think in order for a major change to be successful, a critical mass of Vermont citizens have to be supportive of that change. We encourage you to take the time to ensure that major policy pursuits have the positive overall intent they claim to. It's important to take the time to get it right as opposed to just getting it done. So, any other questions?
Final questions or not?
I'll make one final comment, and that is that, you know, as the sort of commission evolved, just wanted to say Jay took over and really kept us moving forward on task, and we were able to produce a report in a timely fashion.
It's impressive.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Arco, did you have something?
Yeah, it's just a broad question, sort of about the critical mass of Vermont citizens. Because I know this isn't your group, but in the redistricting task force, you know, they're using the number of 5,000 Vermonters.
That is from us.
That is from them.
Oh,
We did that survey and they
Okay.
asked me to share that with them to get all that information.
Okay, so I guess my question is, I know I'm a little off, but we basically have like 650,000 Vermonters, right?
Yeah,
So compared to that 5,000 seems big and seems like it was used as big, but also isn't big compared to 650,000. So what are we saying is a critical mass, and how do we know when we have that critical mass?
afterthought that the numbers were very high. So when we first started getting the number back, I sent a thing to them, I think we had 2,000 right off or something. And I said, concerns me, only got 2,000 people. And they said, oh, are you kidding? That's great survey results.
Okay,
Then we got like 5,000. But if you look at the survey results, I'm just trying to be transparent here. I'm glad you guys are making a decision, not me.
yeah,
The numbers they are skewed in that it's mostly people that are either have kids in school or are work in schools or whatever.
Mhm.
And not that their concerns, including mine and Peter's and anybody around, I think are legitimate, but we also keep hearing from people, we want lower taxes. So there's a dichotomy there. There's people saying cut spending no matter what you have to do, and there's people saying, please don't destroy the system. How do you thread the needle so that you are able to do both?
This was not a random survey. This was an opportunity for people to submit comment.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm certainly not suggesting it was, and I know that not everyone responds to surveys. So I'm wondering, like, when do we say that is our critical mass? We got everyone that is possibly ever going to weigh in on this. They got their opportunity. How do we force people to weigh in on this? I mean, I know you can't.
But
do
we
that.
are a republic. We're not a full democracy.
That's correct.
So we elect representatives to do that for us.
Okay.
Anything else from, yes?
Oh. I was just gonna take another opportunity to say how much I, and I'm sure many of us really appreciate the work. And just to acknowledge, I think there are some folks in the legislature, some Vermonters, some folks in the education field who feel that we didn't fully realize the promise of our initial construct for the commission. And so just want to acknowledge that, personally, a bit of regret there, but also not to thank you very much for the work that you did under some challenging
I
circumstances.
think being fully transparent, when Mike Leiter resigned, I wanted to resign too, and Nicole resigned, I was very upset. But I also knew that in my position, that would mean taking an active principal and putting it in there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that to my principals, and I certainly had no interest chairing the commission. The speaker asked me to do that, and I thank Peter for stepping up with the vice chair. Our job was to get you through to the report and do it as fairly and transparently as we could, and I think we've done that. But I really do wish that we'd had a chance to have the full commission do the work that we were supposed to do in the beginning, and I think we would have I think we might be in a better place today, maybe not, but I think it's likely that we would have been.
I have a sort of a rosier view of that, and I look at, not just the work that we did, but we also have the work of the redistricting task force. And if you sort of combine the two together and then think about the original sort of mission of the commission, that there's sort of a lot there that probably would have been the end result anyway of a report.
Could be.
Yeah, and that's not to diminish all the incredible work that's been done. Absolutely, very appreciative of that. Yeah.
I'd love to follow up on both your comments on that, because I think you're both absolutely right. And I thank you, Jen, for saying that. I wasn't on the committee when you developed that bill and the law, but I strongly supported the Commission on the Future of Public Education because of that. But Peter, I think that Representative Tomlin, I'm so sorry, I probably shouldn't call him Peter. I think it's really important to remember that part. And I don't know whether it's a rosier glow or whatever, but what all of it is saying, both sides, are that that Vermonters care, and I think we all kind of can agree on that, and that we have a deep responsibility here to make sure we do this right, which is what we say in here. And doing it right sometimes means we have to take a step back and take our time to make sure that we take the steps that are necessary and engage Vermonters in a process. So I wish we hadn't had to have this animosity that has come out from this law, but I think our goals are still all very, very similar, if not the same. We are trying to improve the education for Vermonters and for students at a cost that taxpayers can afford. So thank you.
Any last remarks from Jay, Rep. Coleman?
No, but I definitely will testify any part of this. I certainly have ideas, the EPA has ideas, other folks do. But you have tremendous work ahead of you. Take your time, try to do as best you can. And if we can support you in any way, you have a great chair. I met today.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. But seriously, any way that we can help you folks, we want to be part of the solution to help you any way that we can. We'll tell you when we disagree with you, but then if you decide you're going to do something, we'll do whatever we can to try to make it work for kids and families.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
I think the vice chair has proven that he can navigate this committee through the process coming up ahead.
Yeah.
We're a squirrely bunch. He's done a great job.
We appreciate the work of the commission. We appreciate your time here today to tell us about the work. And we got a lot to do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.